Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today I'm going to be talking about what I think the devs need to focus on in terms of what's needed in order to make sure this game survives and improves. I mean, like, this is such a niche category of gaming that there's, what, two, maybe three games out there right now that cover the early to mid 20th century naval combat in an arcade style, but not exactly a simulator style type of game. I mean, it's really this, War Thunder Naval, and then there's like a couple of cheap Chinese ripoffs, and that's really only it. So there's not a lot of competition out there, which I'm sure the devs are well aware of, and that leads to some of the choices that we've been seeing made recently. But anyway, I'm going to go through some of the biggest issues that I have right now with the game and things that I think need to be improved upon. There should be chapters down below so you can bounce around and see my thoughts on certain topics. And these are just my main issues. There's, of course, dozens and dozens of things I could sit here and talk about for hours and hours that need to be changed about the game. But this is, again, in my opinion, some of the biggest issues that the devs need to look at in varying orders of importance. This is in no particular order by any stretch of the imagination, just kind of in the order that I was thinking of them when I was writing the script for this video. But anyway, let's go ahead and get going on with my first issue, which is the port UI. So the port UI, yes, this isn't a huge issue, but it is certainly a quality of life issue that needs to be updated. The UI has not changed at all in the port since I'm pretty sure the pre-alpha days. It's very old, it's very outdated, it looks like it's from the early 2000s, if not the late 1990s. I'm pretty sure I've seen this overlay in a couple of really old MMORPGs before in the past. It just needs some touching up cosmetically and functionally too. Those of you that have been on stream, when we do the community streams, you guys have seen how, for some reason, despite myself being online, someone else being online, we're trying to get them in a division, me typing in their name perfectly the same way that they spell it, and we sit there for 4 or 5 minutes and we can't find said player, even though they're online and they can DM me and I can see them in my DMs, but when I go to invite them to a division, they're still not there. And this has happened too, not only with random players online when we do the community divs, but for clan battles too. We've been sitting in the division inviting this one player that we're trying to get into the clan battles, who's in the clan. We all have them on our contacts list, but for some reason it's not going through. They're not showing up as online. They've restarted their PC, restarted their game multiple times, and it's still not working. And we have to play hot potato with the division to see, okay, so who can we give the division to, the commander position to, and see maybe if they can invite them into the match. It's ridiculous that it's still in the same state, and it desperately needs an upgrade. Again, it's not a huge issue, but it is an annoying one, especially if you've been playing this game for long enough and you've had to deal with it for that long. So if you're listening, devs, for the love of God, update the port UI, fix the bugs in it, give it a bit of a facelift, make it look like it's something from this decade at least. Alright, next up, which I wasn't even sure if I wanted to talk about this, and of course, submarines. So I think it's to the point to where most players should be ready to accept that they're coming out. We're far beyond okay, they can still abandon this at this point and not much has been lost. I mean, they've got 2 lines that we know of for sure already done, that they're testing the full lines in-game right now with the Americans and the Germans. We also know that they are working on the Soviet submarines, an actual sizable submarine fleet, unlike the rest of the Soviet Navy in-game. I'm pretty sure we've heard something about British submarines before, and I'm sure the Japanese have quite a few that they're working on already. But again, we have 2 that are already completely done. They've already gone and completely added in new underwater maps for every single map in the game, with textures, details, sound effects, so forth and so on. They've been bug testing those maps too for quite some time, and we already have a whole host of mechanics to counter them. So the point being is that they are so far into submarines that there's no way that they can just throw them away right now, especially after abandoning their largest office in Belarus and getting rid of their 2 other offices in Russia. There's no way the company can take a loss like that and then go ahead and throw submarines out the window too. Financially, it just wouldn't make since. Now, before we get into my issues with submarines, I do want to point out a couple of things. Wargaming has done a very good job of listening to the community's feedback in regards to submarines. We've seen several changes very recently in direct response to this, such as the visible pings, and now they're bringing back the hydrophone. They've tweaked submarine survivability. They're tweaking depth charge damage from ship launch depth charges, not the airdrop depth charges, among some other things. And also, it's really hard to talk about something that's still in testing. I mean, if you go back and look at my 4 or 5 other videos dedicated to just submarines, most of the information in those videos are outdated because another change has happened, or several other changes have happened since then. And also, it must be pointed out that they have tested submarines far longer than the CV rework. There was like 3 rounds of testing with the CV rework. 2 of them were on their own separate server. One was on, I think, either the PT or the live server, and they just said, alright, that's fine, and threw the CV rework into the game. So they must be commended for that. Now let's go ahead and criticize them. So my main issues with submarines right now is that, first off, ship drop depth charges should be almost instant kills to submarines. When a submarine is spotted by a surface ship, and that surface ship starts moving toward the submarine, the threat from that surface ship should be so great that that sub has to instantly dive to max depth in order to avoid being sunk, as very much was the case in real life in World War II. Now, in addition to not only having that big of a threat from the depth charges of these surface ships, subs on the surface right now are a little bit too survivable. I'm sure plenty of you have seen all the clips going around of the testing of that, so I won't bother to show that again. But if you haven't noticed in game, you can shoot a submarine with a couple full broadsides of even something like battleship AP, and sure, they'll lose a good chunk of their health, but they still have time to dive and get away. Now, of course, if the submarine is damaged, it can't survive that, but from full health, they're about the same in terms of survivability as most of the same tier destroyers. So, large guns, large shells, 15-inch shells, tearing through a submarine, which is a pretty small vessel in real life, especially these World War II era submarines, should wreck them pretty hard. Of course, not only BBAP should do this, but of course, shells from cruisers and destroyers should, again, wreck these submarines. So once again, the threat should be so great that once the submarine gets detected and it's within gun range of these ships, it should dive the second it's spotted. In shorter words, anytime a submarine gets spotted, the threat from the surface ships should be so great that the thing has to crash dive in order to not die. And my last major critique of submarines right now is that the old battery mechanic really needs to come back. This timer, yes, it's simplified, and it's easy to tell how long you've got left underwater, but the old battery mechanics are just so much better. You don't have to worry about am I spotted by 1 or 2 ships, and my battery's magically draining faster, and I think they've actually gotten rid of that now, too. And you had a lot more in-depth of a mechanic with the old battery time, because everything that you did, short of moving the rudder on the old battery mechanic, drained the battery in some way, shape, or form. Pinging, that ate battery up. And that's another big issue I have right now with submarines, is that you can still ping to your heart's content. There's no major downside to doing it. Now, with the hydrophone coming back, that's not exactly true anymore, but still, I don't think it's enough of a penalty to just pinging away to your heart's content. But with the old battery mechanics, if you just sat there and pinged constantly like some submarines do, you were going to run out of battery and be forced to surface. And you would naturally burn more battery when you were being hunted by surface ships. You would have to run the submarine at faster speeds. You would have to be diving, maneuvering, using all these tactics to try and get away from surface ships would burn your battery faster. So naturally, you did burn the battery faster. I think it was a superior mechanic and a much more in-depth one. Now, that's something you'll hear a lot about if you go watch like War Thunder versus War Warships videos, how War Warships isn't as in-depth as War Thunder is, and that's true in some places, not true in some other places. There's a lot of hidden mechanics that aren't shown in-game that are at work in War Warships, and I think this one would add to that and, again, make the game overall more in-depth and, in my opinion, better. So that's my main gripe about submarines right now. Those are my main issues. Of course, you can go into smaller detail with like the homing torpedoes and stuff, but again, it's very hard to talk about those mechanics when a lot of those mechanics are constantly being changed at the moment. But those are, again, my main gripes with subs at the moment. So my next major gripe with the game, and something that definitely needs to be looked at and still improved upon, is that AA still, we're in 11.4. It's been 2.5, almost 3 patches since the CV rework, and AA is still one of two extremes. It's either entirely useless or god tier. There's very little ships in between. You know, you're either an Agincourt with 2 AA guns, or you're a Kid, which seems to have CWIS installed on the ship. Again, it still feels mostly useless unless you're some ship that's got god tier AA that's built into it. And even building into AA a lot of times now, again, unless you're in something like a Worcester, a Kidd, an Alston, a Small End, or one of the pan-European higher tier DDs, it feels mostly useless. Now, they have tried to address this with some new CV mechanics, like with the Soviet CVs, with their squadrons that attack all at once, because now, when you shoot down a plane or two, you take, a torpedo or two or a bomb or two out of the attacking flight that's coming toward you, and again, I like that idea, that your AA actually matters now, because with the other CVs, say you have a squadron of, 10 planes, and the attacking flight is 3 planes. You can shoot down 5 planes, and the other planes from the rest of the squadron are going to go ahead and fill in that attacking flight. So, while you did you did destroy some of the carrier's planes, you haven't really done anything to take away the damage coming in at you. But with the Soviet CVs, with those all-at-once mechanics, you can take down, 2 or 3 planes, and that removes the ordnance coming in at you. I really like the idea around that, and then they gave him the ability to drop outside of most of your effective AA. Now with the Hornet, we're also seeing some of that mixed in with some of the old mechanics. You have 2 large flights in the Hornet where, sure, you can shoot down a couple of planes and potentially take some ordnance out of the strike, but there still is that squadron in the back filling up that other squadron. It seems like they kind of tried to do a bit of both right there, and I think it works for the most part because the Hornets planes are fairly lower tier, and it is easy to shoot down a lot of the Hornets planes, but then the Hornet also has a very fast plane regen rate. But you guys see what I'm saying, that they're making some progress with trying to balance it one way or the other, but I don't think enough attention is being given to it right now, as I'm sure most of the devs' attention is on, submarines at the moment. And again, what's the solution? At the end of the day, I don't know. Manually controlled AA has been tossed around a lot because the planes are manually controlled by the player, but the AA gunners are all AI controlled, and a really good CV player can bait out the AI and, fly like they're going one direction and obviously juke, and the AI takes much longer to respond to that than a player would. But then imagine having to manually control your AA guns when you're in the middle of a gunfight. It's not something that can be reasonably be done by most of the player base. And again, are huge AA buffs the solution? I don't know, because try playing CVs. If you're not used to it, it can be incredibly frustrating sometimes with AA. AA seems to be very inconsistent still. So I don't know what the solution is, but it is certainly still a problem. Alright, my next main issue with the game is that we really need new game modes. We really, 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 really need new game modes. We've been primarily playing 3 game modes for years now. Myself, 5, almost 6 years now, we've been playing Standard Battle, Epicenter, and Domination. That's it. That's the 3 main game modes we've been playing. And sure, there's ranked and clan battles and such, but most of those are just variations upon those same game modes, mostly just Domination. It's time for more. It's beyond time for more. And yes, Arms Race might finally become a new game mode, thank God. It's beyond time that thing gets thrown into the random battles matchmaking. But we've had plenty of temporary game modes that have worked great. Convoy Escort was great fun. And now with Submarines coming in, you can make an asymmetrical Convoy Escort with, let's say, 10 submarines on one side and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 surface ships on the other side that I think would be tremendous fun. You could do something like that. Dirigible Derby was just an absolute blast, and I'm pretty sure everyone absolutely enjoyed the heck out of that game mode. We've had, of course, asymmetric battles, which that one needs some more work. Historical battles, which, again, that one needed some more work too, but there's still certainly enough solid temporary game modes that we've gone through that could potentially make a game mode of the week mode that we could select, just like we can select between co-op, ranked, random battles, so forth and so on. We could have a game mode of the week that's, hey, this week it's convoys, next week it's dirigible derby, week after that asymmetric battles, week after that it's historical battles, week after that it's submarine convoys, so forth and so on. It could work, and we definitely need new game modes. It's beyond time for fresh content for this game in terms of game modes. Again, we've been playing the same game modes for the past 5 to 6 years now. It's desperately time for more. My final gripe is that super ships still need work. It was still far too soon for these things to be added just straight into the game, straight into the tech trees. But just like submarines, I do believe the super ships are unfortunately here to stay. I actually kind of dislike these super ships more than I dislike submarines. I mean, they were around for much shorter in terms of testing. And sure, they work on mechanics and concepts that the game has been working on for years, of course, with surface ship content and artillery ships and not like submarines. But they're already moving forward with more and more super ships. We just got the German super ship, super cruiser getting announced, and then we got the Patrie, which looks like an absolute unbalanced mess that was announced too. So Tier 9, for starters, is abhorrently not ready to constantly face super ships. Now, I know the idea behind these super ships is that they're stupidly expensive to run and operate, so many players will not be taking them constantly out into battle. But when you're a Tier 9 ship in a Tier 10 game with super ships involved, you're not having a good time. Tier 9 was designed to fight Tier 10 and not be double up tiered to Tier 11 now. And they're having to deal with that. And many of these Tier 9 ships probably aren't going to get buffed at all. Think about that too. These ships probably aren't going to get buffed. I mean, I know they released a whole slew of changes to ships last week, but most of those were to complete tech line branches and individual ships and stuff. It's not like they said, okay, so now we're going to give, if Tier 9 cruisers don't have heals, we're going to go ahead and give those heals. Same with Tier 9 DDs, and we're looking at improving battleship heals or whatever is needed to counter these super ships, make it a more balanced engagement when it comes to Tier 9. I mean, good God. You have ships like old premium ships too, like Musashi, that has to now deal with Eagle. Yeah, Musashi, that old premium ship that either you grinded 750,000 free XP for, you wailed $300, $400, $500 at Christmas time to get with almost no AA, and you're like, okay, I can deal with the Tier 10 carriers just fine. But now you got to go up against Eagle with that. Yeah, that sucks. Again, that is just one ship, but I'm sure many of you here have been wronged by some super ship in some way, shape, or form in the past few weeks. Now, while it is true that these ships are incredibly expensive to play, is it fair that someone gets something as OP as Eagle again, just for the trade-off of losing credits that round? I mean, Eagle is outright broken. It is ridiculous, and we just had 500,000 damage broken, I believe, last week in the United States. That is not a number that's been broken since RTS Midway back in the day. So they've made carriers that are now worse in terms of balance than the old RTS CVs. And if you weren't around for the old RTS CVs days, oh God, if you think the carriers that we have right now are broken, you haven't seen broken as a good RTS CV player. So, yeah, super ships, I don't think they belong in the game. It was fun for the mode that we had them in, to go derp around in there and, farm down this battleship with this massive HP bar and stuff. It's kind of like a Dark Souls boss. And it was fun in its own separate game mode, but I don't think they fit. I really don't think they fit. And we've always seen this at the higher tier meta, how everything's so much more passive now. It is incredible how passive most tier 10 games are now, and how long it takes players to often get beyond the even out of spawn now. It takes forever for the game to get anywhere. It's incredibly stagnant at higher tier now with super ships, and it's kind of again screwed with the matchmaking again. So that's always fun. But anyway, guys, those are my main gripes with the game right now, and some of the biggest issues I believe that the devs need to work on. And there are other issues too, like the amount of gimmicky ships we're getting, the amount of spammy ships we're getting, like with the Forrest Sherman and the like. Those are also issues too that should be addressed, but these are just my personal main ones that I think they need to take a look at. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think the devs need to take a long, hard look at when it comes to the game. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs, and I kind of thank you guys enough for that. Hope you have a wonderful Tuesday, have a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.